Question 1, write each expression in the form a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers. Plot the numbers in the complex plane as a guide in the designated color. On number 1, we've done some examples with negative square roots before. So when we take the square root of a negative number, remember that the negative part becomes the I, and then we just take the square root of the number that's left under the radical. So the square root of 4 would be 2. So this answer here would be 2i. So if we graph that in the color that they want us to graph it, this would be, I'm actually going to rewrite this in blue. So 2i is what the answer is, but we want it to write it in a plus bi form. Well, we have the imaginary part. We're missing the real part of the complex number. So if that part is missing, you just replace it with I. How do we represent nothing with a number? That's 0. So 0 plus 2i would be this point on our graph. Remember that the horizontal is the real axis and the vertical is the imaginary axis. So for the second part, we have 3i times 2i. So 3i times 2i. We're just going to multiply the numbers together, which gives us 6. And then if we multiply the i's together, we get I squared. And remember that I squared is the same thing as -1, so this is the same thing as 6 times -1, and 6 times -1 is -6. So this would be -6, and this part is a real number, but we're missing the imaginary part, so we would put plus 0i because we want to write it in a plus bi form. So a represents the real portion of the complex number, and bi represents the imaginary part of the complex number. So if we did -6 plus 0i, we would go to -6 on the real axis and then go up or down 0i, which would leave us right on that real axis. So the next part that we are looking at is I to the 4th. And I to the 4th you should all recognize as just the number 1. And that is a real number, so we have the a portion of our complex number. We need the imaginary portion, which would be plus 0i. So 1 plus 0i, we would go to 1 on the real and then 0 on the imaginary, which would leave us right here. And the last one that we're looking at is 4 minus 3 times the square root of -1. So remember, this is kind of our, excuse me, this is kind of our basic understanding of what an imaginary number is. The square root of -1 is I. So this would be 4 minus 3i. Just like with x's, if it was 4 minus 3x, you can't subtract these because this is an imaginary number and this is a real number. You can't combine imaginary and real numbers together. So if we have 4 minus 3i, 4 is the real portion of our complex number, so that's going to go to 4 on the real axis, and then -3i is the imaginary portion, which means that it's 3 below the real axis, and so we're going to put that one right there.